say somebody's name, then everybody will know who it is. So what did you bring us
after the Tuesday meeting?
Their printout from the counties,
Well, this is Dennis.
for how much it says from their budget book,
So was it 3 million or 300,000?
100,000.
300,000, okay.
give or take.
Well, yeah.
I may agree that certain of those laws probably need to.
Those are all the questions that I would love to have answered.
It should go. And again, I'm not gonna say an oath of blood here. That money should go to pay for
That's what they are.
their personnel costs and all the other stuff that they should be doing. Now, whether they're
Regardless of our personal feelings.
above that, quite frankly, I don't mind if they make a little couple percent, but we don't know that.
But we don't know that. I don't either. I just want to know what is the information.
Yeah.
Well, just another part of a bizarre year.
Yes. County sheet.
I can tell you, these are all excellent questions that I would like to see answered.
I'm not seeing a surplus.
If you go to any of the years, FY 20,
831 expenses,
and then if you go to funding sources,
revenue.
1.168, so it's roughly 350
The other day was
plus.
you can't. They don't do all the stuff we do in our budget book. They didn't say that they should be doing, but that was not the case. And that's why you get partials. We get there 5 o'clock. Somebody beeped out there. All right, we'll get started here. We'll get everybody.
They'll be on their way.
Sarah's on her way.
We think.
Let's see. I haven't heard from her.
Opening of the shops, I was like, whatever. We've been over this a lot.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City Council meeting for the City of Sierra Vista for July 23rd, 2020. I call the meeting to order. Mrs. Adams, may we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Rick Mueller,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rachel Gray,
Present.
Councilmember William Benning,
Present.
Councilmember Gwen Calhoun,
Present.
Councilmember Sarah Pacheco, Councilmember Carolyn Umphrey,
Present.
Councilmember Christine Wolf.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. We'll start tonight as we always do with the invocation / a moment of reflection, followed by the pledge. And tonight we will have for the invocation reflection, Miss Sabra Albritton, President of the Sierra Vista Women's Club. Sir, would you come up to the mic, please?
So tonight I'm going to read our club collect because it pretty much says everything. And it is written by Mary Stewart. Keep us, O God, from pettiness. Let us be large in thought, in word, in deed. Let us be done with fault finding and leave off self-seeking. May we put away all pretense and meet each other face to face without self-pity and without prejudice. May we never be hasty in judgment and always be generous. Let us take time for all things. Make us to grow calm, serene, gentle. Teach us to put into action our better impulses, straightforward and unafraid. Grant that we may realize it is the little things that create differences, that in the big things of life we are as one. And may we strive to touch and to know the great common human heart of us all. And, O Lord God, let us forget not to be kind.
Thank you, Miss Albritton. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Miss Umphrey.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge my
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Thank you, Miss Umphrey. Mrs. Umphrey. Yeah, I I already thanked Ms. Albritton, but it's worthwhile. She does a great job. So we'll start with item number 1. Mr. Benning, the acceptance of the agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the agenda for the regular city council meeting of July 23rd, 2020 be approved as written.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any additions, corrections, comments on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. I also want to mention, before we started with item 1, Ms. Pacheco, for the record, is with us. Okay, next item on the agenda is the city manager's report. Mr. Patucci.
Thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the council. Our next regularly scheduled work session is scheduled for August 11th, Tuesday at 3 p.m., and that is here in the council chambers. Of course, the next council meeting is then Thursday, the 13th at 5, also here in the council chambers. A couple of projects tonight. The Fort Huachuca Joint Resource Utilization Study Grant is out on the street. And then our NEPA environmental clearance for the EMS substation, which is to be located across 7th Street from Tompkins Park, is also on the street as well. So those projects will be proceeding. As I mentioned Tuesday on our sales tax numbers for the month of May, of course, right during the height of the COVID crisis, our actual gross May sales tax figures were up $205,000 or 12% over last year, putting us at 4.4% fiscal year 20 over fiscal year 19 and 6.6% net over budget for that time period. So the local economy has responded well, and that's a credit to all the people and businesses in Sierra Vista. So, so far, so good on that, and we'll continue to monitor and report on those numbers. And then finally, just COVID update. The governor, of course, just had his press conference at 3, showing some positive results from his recent orders over the past few weeks. And the numbers do seem to be dropping at a fairly rapid rate. Of course, there's a lot of work to do and a lot of monitoring to do on that. But locally, in terms of Cochise County's numbers, today we were down to 361 active cases, and we'd been running, in the 400 range up to 450 before that. So that's an improvement. And our zip code data, 85635, is down to 67 active cases, and it's 5650 down to 21 active cases. So that is an improvement as well. So again, credit to everybody out there, no matter how you are helping out with this particular COVID-19 pandemic locally. We appreciate it and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add, that hopefully that's just the start of better news to come, and we still got a ways to go in this issue. Okay. Any questions for the city manager on his report? Okay, thank you, Mr. Patucci. First item is a public hearing item. Mayor Pro Tem Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2020-045, an application for a Series 7 liquor license for Kevin Arnold Cramber on behalf of Delect Foods of Arizona LLC, doing business as Pizza Hut, number 036994, 900 East Fry Boulevard, Sierra Vista, Arizona, be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mrs. Adams, may we have the staff report, please?
Mayor Mueller, members of council, this application is for an ownership transfer of a Series 7 liquor license, which is a beer and wine bar liquor license for the Pizza Hut on the west side of town, the Pizza Hut Bistro. The notice of this public hearing was posted on the premise, the required in excess of the required 20 days, and no comments from the public have been received, pro or con. The background check performed by the police department found nothing to prohibit this going forward, and if voted approved tonight, it will be returned to the state for final action. I would note, thanks to Councilmember Humphrey, she spotted an error in the application that Mr. Cranber had indicated that there was no drive-through, and he submitted the appropriate amendment to the state, and they sent it on to us this morning. So everything is all square, and we're good to go.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. Any questions for Mrs. Adams on her report? Any comments by the council on the issue? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 3. Ms. Adams.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2020-046, an application for a Series 6 liquor license for Kevin Arnold Cranber on behalf of 1949 Investments, doing business as Rookies, 2239 East Fry Boulevard, Sierra Vista, Arizona, be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now, Mrs. Adams.
Mayor Mueller, members of council, this application is for a Series 6 full bar liquor license. It's an ownership transfer as well. As I noted on Tuesday during the work session, Mr. Cranber is the agent for both of these liquor licenses. That is one of his occupations. He is a professional liquor license manager, if you will. The notice of this public hearing was posted on the Rookies facility, and no comments have been received pro or con. The police department did their background check and have no objection to it moving forward. If approved tonight, it will be returned to the state for final action.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. Any questions for Mrs. Adams? Any further discussion on this item?
Nope.
Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? You opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you, Mrs. Adams. Item number 4, Ms. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that ordinance 2020-004, proposed development code text amendments to section 151.22.011 sub E sub 2, property development standards for manufactured home parks be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Pregler, may we have the staff report, please?
Yes, you can, of course. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. There has been a recent trend with installing larger-sized manufactured homes within existing manufactured home parks. Now, some of these manufactured homes have actually exceeded building setbacks on these park spaces. Case in point, the City Council approved a development agreement on January 23rd to reduce the setbacks for the Mountain View Mobile Home Park because the homes actually exceeded the setbacks. So rather than continuing with development agreements for every individual park, staff is recommending an amendment to reduce the setbacks for manufactured home parks. So the specific amendment would reduce the front and rear yard setbacks from 10 feet to 5 feet. Now the side yard setbacks for these parks is already 5 feet, so it would be a 5-foot setback in all directions of the particular space. Now, these reduced setbacks will allow siting flexibility for the park owner. Now, the development code requires that each space provide parking for 2 vehicles on each park space. Now, again, to ensure that there is flexibility, the language would not dictate the location of the parking, but only ensure that there was ample space available for the parking. Relating to the building code does require a minimum of 10-foot separation between buildings, and this amendment would meet that requirement. The fire marshal has indicated approval of the amendments, provided additional site mitigation, if necessary, is included with the issuance of a building permit. And this could be something as simple as trimming some of the overhead trees so that fire wouldn't spread from space to space, home to home. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend unanimous approval at the July 7th meeting. The code amendments have been posted online since June. A link to the amendments was printed in the public notice that was published on June 21st. The city has not received any comments regarding these amendments. And this does conclude staff's report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Pregler. Questions for Mr. Pregler on this report? Yes, ma'am.
I do. And I apologize for not thinking of this on Tuesday, but when you commented about needing the 2 spots for parking,
Correct.
and that we're not dictating where those parking spots should be, do you foresee some issues with that particular part of the law, that they will have space in their property to park their cars?
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun. So we actually contacted the new owners of the Mountain View Mobile Home Park. They're also in the process of purchasing Sierra Grande Mobile Home Park. And they have their own policy that they would provide enough space for 2 vehicles on all of their park spaces as well. So I don't foresee it being a problem. Again, if they cannot provide the 2 spaces, they'd have to provide a smaller manufactured home in that particular space.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, I've just been told we do have a public comment here. I don't have my glasses with me, so I apologize if I can't read this.
You can borrow hers.
Let's see here. Let me read what it says. It says, by reducing the setbacks, we in effect reduce green space. Our beautiful city is known for birds and butterflies, and we want to be recognized for that. Every action this city takes to reduce green space pushes wildlife like hummingbirds out of town. How can we be recognized as the world's hummingbird capital if we don't make preservation of habitat and green space a priority? And then secondly, it says, by increasing the dwelling size, we in effect raise the cost. Larger dwellings will likely cost tenants more. This action will increase the average cost of housing in our city. That's what it says.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a public comment. Go ahead. You, sir.
Okay. Then I'd like to ask another question. Do you happen to know, I don't remember from what we saw, if there is public space in the mobile home park, do they have some space for picnicking and such?
For Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun, in Mountain View Mobile Home Park, for example, they will be adding some landscaping, some green space, as you said. There is also going to be a community pool. There's also be a community rec center. So there will be various recreational amenities on the site in addition to the landscaping they'll be providing. So
I think it was a good point, but I'm concerned that by changing any of that, it'll change the whole landscape or the whole plan for that park. So I appreciate the comment. Thanks.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On the same along the same lines, Jeff, I was thinking back to the conversation we had with the park owners when this amendment first came up. What was it like? When was this? It was what?
Back in
6 months
January,
ago?
I believe.
January. Okay, it was 6 months ago. Okay. Is it more common now for manufactured homes as kind of the way that the industry is moving as to these manufactured homes? They tend to run larger than mobile homes used to run, or I mean, there was a conversation that was had along those lines. Is that correct, or am I off base here?
No,
I think it was that like the comment that he said, and I would kind of just add it to the pile of comments, but was that manufactured homes are kind of the trend of the industry, because they're safer and last longer and things like that, more durable, but they tend to be bigger. They just on average than mobile homes. Correct?
I remember that too.
Yeah, I just remember that part of the conversation. I want to bring it up.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Pregler? Thank you, Mr. Pregler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go on to item number 5. Ms. Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2020-047, final budget for FY 2020-2021 be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Osborne, may we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Following public hearing, the resolution before the council today is for the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 operating budget for the city, the final amount being $86,748,629. The tentative budget, as well as all state forms, have been posted on the city's website. In accordance with the state statute, the council will meet on August 13th, 2020 at 5 p.m. to vote on the primary property tax levy, which will conclude the budget process for council for fiscal year 2021. I'll be completing the final budget book, and it will be available to you and the public at the end of September or early October.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions for Ms. Osborne? Thank you, Jen, for all the hard work And this has been again, every year it's a big process that we go through with a series of meetings, public hearings, et cetera. And you've done a good job for your first time through, I think. And we still have money, so that's good. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody. A lot of hard work on the staff there. Okay, we're down to new business. Item number 6. Mrs. Pacheco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the city council regular meeting minutes of July 9th, 2020 be approved as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additions, corrections, discussion on the minutes? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to remind I'll be abstaining from voting on that.
Okay, so you'll be abstaining. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's 6-4, 1 abstention. Thank you. We now move to item number 7. Mr. Benning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that ordinance 2020-005, Big O Tires annexation, be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Fisher, may we have the staff report, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Mayor Mueller, members of council. Tonight, we have the final required council action for the Big O Tires annexation, acceptance into ordinance. And to summarize how we got here tonight, on September 12th, 2019, the city of Sierra Vista agreed to construct and finance a driveway access located within the Avenida Cochise right-of-way for Big O Tires. The driveway was to provide access from the subject property to Avenida Cochise, and in return, the owner, Cochise Roadworks LLC, agreed to sign a pre-annexation agreement for the property. This decision was in line with ongoing annexation policy, which targets county enclaves like Big O Tires. Noting the completion of the driveway access, staff proceeded with the filing of a blank petition with the county recorder's office on June 12th. The decision to proceed with the signing of the blank petition was approved by City Council on July 9th. Utilizing the signature ascertained from the pre-annexation agreement, the blank petition is now technically signed and ready for acceptance into ordinance. If the annexation is accepted and recorded with the Cochise County Recorder's Office, a 30-day challenge period will begin, and following this challenge period, the annexation will officially take effect. And upon that, the zoning of the property would change from its current designation as GB, General Business, to the equivalent city zone, General Commercial, GC. And to the financial regard, the property will add property tax, sales tax, and license fee revenues to the city. Service costs should be minimal, as this is a single parcel already surrounded by a city right-of-way, and there are no more proposed infrastructure improvements at this time. This concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Do we have any questions for Mr. Fisher?
I think all of our staff should read their stuff that.
No, you got to talk to the mic.
Oh, I thought you were telling me he was good.
No.
I think all of our staff should read their presentations that enthusiastic. That was like listening to story time. Thank you.
And you're not even a grandma yet.
No, and better not be for a very long time.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Appreciate your presentation. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 8. Ms. Gray.
Thank you, and I'll have the mic this time. Mr. Mayor, I move that Resolution 2020-048, Court Consolidation Agreement with Cochise County, be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Yarborough, there she is. Okay. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So this agreement will extend our partnership with Cochise County to provide for consolidated court services. Judge Conlog had reviewed our previous agreement and proposed changes to streamline it, which would state the municipal court is merged into and consolidated with the Sierra Vista Justice Court Precinct 5, which shall then provide the services of a municipal court. References to the Sierra Vista Magistrate Court and City Magistrate are thereby removed as redundant. There are some additional terms added since we last discussed this, and those were added in Section 3, subsection D, which requires some reporting from the county. The requirements are more vague than we had discussed with the council previously. primarily because I'm still working on determining exactly what reports we can get, though I have been able to receive a significant amount of information in the past few weeks from the county staff. I thought it would be pertinent to share with the county some of the discussion with the city, some of the information I received this afternoon from the court on why some of these reports are difficult to receive or why we haven't gotten them in as timely a manner as we expected. So for clarification, there is a limited ability within the county to run specific reports. They must be requested from the state administrative office of the courts. Once that data is pooled, the state court analysts then prepare the report and send it back to the county, who then passes it on to us. The state holds the official record and data, and they handle all IT, so they control the rights and permissions of the county staff to the information. So again, that's just information on how the reports are generated and shared with us, and why I'm still working on what information we can receive. Also added in Section 4, subsection D of the agreement, that the city's payment to the county is dependent upon receiving that data. So this will, of course, be an ongoing process as the agreement is extended for 1 year, but I expect to be able to come back to council much earlier than 1 year from now with information requested and continuing with the work on determining a formula for the money the city spends on court services and why. The financial impact, once more, is $161,000, which is included in the fiscal year 2021 budget. For the costs, $100,000 for court costs and $61,000 for a part-time magistrate pro tem. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Yarborough. Questions from Mrs. Yarborough? Sir.
Mr. Mayor, I want to make a motion that we table Resolution 2020-048 for the following reasons. Tomorrow, there's a meeting for the I don't know if I'm going to say the word right, on the ethical process of the JP5 taking on a magistrate for the cities. So I guess judges are meeting tomorrow. I'm not sure what time. I'll have more information as I get it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're aware that that is specifically about all the other courts except ours.
Roger.
Okay.
And without the lack of more data, and I appreciate everything we're doing, but I think in a way we're putting a cart before the horse. If a lot of things in our agreements blank, we're voting on a blank agreement. We're not voting on anything pertinent that's going to solve anything. I have no issue giving people. I made the motion.
Let me see if we have a second before we start discussing it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, sir.
Who was it?
It was me.
Ms. Pacheco seconds. Okay. Let's have discussion.
Right now, we're based on the agreement we've been given with modifications and from meeting and talking, and I appreciate Victoria's hard work. I wish it would come from other areas also outside of us. And I'm glad this is tonight because we just passed our annual budget and we wouldn't sit here and approve something from our staff without proper information, without all the information we need to make a decision. And we're doing that with another entity going into an agreement. I'd like to take a time, even if it's pushing it back to August 13th, so Victoria can do more work, get more information, provide us more information, so we can make an informed decision, not just for us, but for our constituents and for the courts going forward, whatever we're going to do. I know we have new judges coming in. We have a new judge coming in for JP5 and taking over the JP5. So that's why I'd like to table this at least for another until August 13th. I think is the next meeting. But I don't want to sit here and get no votes and not go through, and then I don't know where we're at that point. So I'd rather table it, get information that we need, and then bring it back to the table.
So what information specifically do you feel you need by August 13th? Which is 3 weeks?
Well, Mr. Mayor, right now, and it goes to the other discussion, right now we have two different figures from the county of their net or lack of net profits or not profits for the Justice of the Peace already.
That's not accurate. Mr. Petichik, you want to make a comment?
Mr. Mayor, based on the budget report from the county and The fine revenue received from the court, all jurisdictions reporting in, was just north of $300,000 per year. Okay, and we estimate, based on the number of cases going into the court, that we're 60% of that. So we estimate about $250,000 in fine revenue next year.
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, I'm good,
You have
Mr.
the
Mayor.
floor. You have the floor. Okay, further discussion on the table, motion to table.
On that motion.
Yep.
No, I think your question is what I was gonna ask. What else would be helpful? Did you say we would be signing a blank? What did
We
you
don't
mean
even
by-
know what numbers we're asking for, what reports we can get in this IGA currently. So what are we asking them for at this point in this time? If we don't know what we can get right now, all we're saying is we want to get things, unless I heard it wrong. I'm
Mr. Petitiuk, would you discuss?
Well, actually, Victoria has it, but
Sorry.
I'm sure we'd say the same thing, but go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I can give a little more clarification on the exact data that we are working on. So there were a number of data points requested by council, and according to my notes, those were the number of cases that were cited into the court by the Sierra Vista PD. We can get that information. The total fines collected for Sierra Vista cases and the fines in arrears, that is the information that we are still working on. I am able to get information that shows the total amount of fines received by the courts. That report I have in my possession. What I do not have is a breakdown of Sierra Vista, and that is the information that I'm not sure if we can get. But I have been reassured by the court staff that although we may not be able to get that report, they feel confident that they could give us an estimate based on the number of cases that Sierra Vista cites into the court. And then the annual cost breakdown or a budget report that we also know we can get, and that was shared with council. So those are the data points specifically that I'm working on getting information of.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Victoria.
And that sounds like the information that we would need. So does that?
Yeah, I agree.
That's what we requested.
I agree.
We still have a motion to table. Any further discussion on the motion to table? I'll call for the question. All those in favor of tabling this item? 2, 3. Those against? The motion to table fails. So we go back to the original motion, which is the court agreement. Any further discussion on the court agreement? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question that perhaps you could explain a little bit more clearly to me. I would prefer that our agreement was only for 6 months rather than for a full year. And that would be my preference. However, maybe you could explain why we would do it for a year rather than 6 months.
First of all, normally we do it for a year as a standard practice, or if we can get the proper data more than a year, because that locks us in probably at a lower rate in this case.
It would cost us less.
It may cost us more if we go 6 months to 6 months.
I see.
Because they can
Okay.
adjust the rate every 6 months rather than adjust it every year.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Or if we
Okay.
went to 2 years, it might be to our advantage because they
Mhm.
wouldn't adjust the rate unless they came back to us and requested an amendment to the contract.
But I do understand correctly, we're asking for quarterly reports so that
That's correct.
we can see.
And the other thing that is, if you read the comments in the contract, we can also delay payment until we do get those quarterly reports, and that was something that was not in the previous agreement.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
Does
helpful.
that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And I'm not off base. The two experts here. I'm not off base. Okay. All right.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I think that I also thought, a 6-month period was almost like a trial period to see if they would hold up their end of the bargain, because we did this last year. We said, we'll renew
Well-
it for another year and you guys need to provide us this information. They just didn't give us the information.
Well, and again, I'll say it wasn't for lack of trying, but again, when we talk about the contract for 6 months, we also discussed about how we could strategically not be able to set up our own court. So if we axe the contract in less than a year, less in 6 months, then we would have to immediately come up with how we're going to establish our own court. You might not have been there for that part of the discussion, but the example I use, and I'll mention it again, is the fire station number 3. Obviously, fire service is something that's continuous, like a court service would be. And the way we were able to, with our meager funds, meager tax revenue, the way we were able to get that established is we built up a reserve group of firefighters for the personnel, who are obviously specialized, just like a court staff would be specialized folks when you're talking about the clerks as well as the bailiffs, et cetera, specialized staff. And then we also bought equipment and put them at the other stations. So we got up to the level of service. And then the last thing was actually building fire station number 3. And that whole kit and caboodle was a little over $3 million. Okay, which is similar to what the cost of setting up the court would be if we had to do it on our own. And we did that. We did the fire station over a number of years. We have to continually provide this service. We can't just stop.
I know.
And poof, there's a court. And how do we pay for it? I don't know. So we have to have time. So what I'm suggesting in this long tirade of mine here is that what we really need to do is do it for a year. The first couple of quarters, we're going to see whether or not they're doing it the right way. Then's the time we need to sit down. Okay, do we strategically need to sit down and figure out how we're going to go deal with this court issue in the future, if it's still an issue? If it's not still an issue, we're done. But if it's still an issue, then we're buying time basically, so we can figure a normal progression of how we're going to fund it, how we're going to man it, how we're going to operate it, where's it going to be located. There's a whole lot of logistical questions because we can't set up a court in 6 months even. So that's why I suggested that we go ahead and do the annual plan, and based on responses from the county on the new reporting requirements, that will dictate to us whether long range we're going to have to come up with a plan and go on our own. And to me, that sounds like a better plan than 6 months and 6 months.
So
And that was my suggestion.
Okay. Can we be assured that we would get some kind of report?
Well, if we don't get a report, they don't get the money.
Yeah, but
That's the only way we can really.
Get it, can it be shared with the council? So
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It'll be a public report.
Yeah.
Of course, and that's one of the reasons we put it in there, because we want to see that they are responsive, and we know exactly what the numbers are. Because I'm not uncomfortable. I am uncomfortable as the rest of you guys going on a wing and a prayer for another year. But we have to be practical, and that's my whole point. And we may not like it, but we got to make sure we provide the court services to folks. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I might have a little bit of a different perspective on this. So based on our meeting earlier this week, where we were provided information from the staff with the proposed budget, looking at the number of cases that we're citing in, I don't see any discrepancy. And I'm okay with seeing those numbers and knowing that we can get them going forward. I'm pretty confident in voting in favor of this agreement. So I think with the amendments that we have put in that require the reporting, and without the reporting, no payment, which is typical in a contract as well, that I see no issue going forward. So.
Ms. Wolf, you haven't spoken up. You want to say your piece?
I think I've said my piece several times, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure anybody wants to hear my piece again.
Any other comments or further discussion? Is everybody ready? I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Was yours opposed?
No.
You're in favor. So it's 5-2. It passes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good discussion. And this is obviously something we're going to have to continue to monitor in the next several months. Okay, that completes Item number 8 on court consolidation. We now move to call the public. I have some folks that are here tonight to speak to us. If you haven't filled out one of these forms, we have forms available back here so that you can address us. When you address us, you have 5 minutes to speak with us. There's a lighting system here that will start green and go to red, yellow to red, and if we hit the red mark, I'll ask you to conclude your remarks, and the next person will call the next person up. So tonight we're going to start with Mr. Haupt.
Good evening. I believe IT is going to set up the overhead, which I plan to use. Before we get going, the issue I'm going to talk about tonight is a touchy subject. I'm going to address Chief Thrasher's presentation on police training the other day. I think it was important, and I'd like to provide some public feedback. So when the overhead is ready, so we don't have to
Go check on it, make sure it
Yeah,
happens.
sure. No?
Can you get the mic closer to me? There you go. Thank you, Jill.
You're gonna put it
Overhead's
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. So
Okay,
set it
it's
here.
working. All right, thank you very much. All right, so my name is Matthew Haupt, resident in Sierra Vista for 10 years now. You can't hear?
Okay.
Still can't hear.
There you go.
Okay, you got to have it right there, despite COVID anyway. All right, so yes, I attended the work session last week where Chief Thrasher presented his brief on police training. I want to give some feedback to him and the council. First of all, I applaud the council for calling for that work session and for Chief Thrasher's willingness to make that presentation. It demonstrates great integrity to be so transparent with the public. Thank you. It must be a tough job right now to be a police officer in the current climate and shadow of some tragic events across the nation. So thank you for what you do. We learned from the brief that our cops are well trained in the use of force and what justifies the use of force, even deadly force. But a couple things stood out to me in that brief. The first thing is the word subject. That is the only way that other human beings were referred to. So you and I, who are not police, are subjects in that first contact. Whenever we meet a police officer who's on duty, we are a subject. And I think that that can be dehumanizing and detrimental to the relationship between police and the public. And I think it sets up a barrier, a mind frame that is dehumanizing and builds a barrier. And another thing that stood out to me in the brief was Chief Thrasher mentioned that moment of first contact being so critical and trying to get the most out of that, trying to extend that for just a couple seconds, if you can have that time to think clearly and assess the situation. So I think those are critical elements of the relationship between the police and the public is humanity and consciousness. I'd like to share an example that's happened here in America when we've lost our humanity and consciousness. So right now, you see a body cam image, and this came to be due to a traffic infraction. The young man allegedly rolled through a stop sign. So when his name is Ty Anders, and when he exited his vehicle, his arms were out. And he was asking, "What did I do?" Though his arms were already up, the officer is armed and aiming a gun at him, demanding that he put his arms up. His arms are already up, and this was repeated a few times. So this escalated. The young man's grandmother came out of his house to try to stop the situation. She was subsequently toppled over as multiple police officers went towards him for the arrest. Neighbors were involved as well. All right, so that's what happens when we can lose our humanity and our consciousness. So now my suggestions on how we can prevent that. And first of all, let me say that I believe it's due to exceptional leadership that we have not had any situations like that in our city that have ended up on YouTube. So thank you, Chief Thrasher. So there's something called mindfulness, and it's basically a practical application of meditation practices. It's how you apply it in your everyday life. I've taken this training where I work, and what it does for people, it improves our performance and relationships through self-awareness. There is certified training that we can, or that you can basically have for your officers.
Mr.
It's
Al,
available, yes.
your
And I'm running out of
Your
time.
5 minutes have expired. Please make your concluding remarks.
Concluding remarks. Thank you very much. So that mindfulness training, a policy, an actual policy on de-escalation, and the 2 recommendations from the NAACP to prohibit chokeholds and also initiate civil review boards. I think that's not too much to ask. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you,
and thank
Mr.
you,
Howe.
Chief Thrasher.
We'll next ask Ms. O'Daniel. O'Daniel, excuse me.
It's all right. They mess it up all the time.
Yeah, I guess I've messed it up a few times too.
Wait, I wanted to come down on your. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Mr. Mayor, City Council, I was listening to the Garrett Lewis talk show on KNST Radio Tucson on Tuesday and heard some interesting statistics regarding the transmission rates of COVID-19 and the wearing of masks. One report cited a study in Ireland that found an exceedingly small number of children that contracted coronavirus died, the percentage being 0.0003%, and there were no reported cases of teachers being infected with COVID from the children in their classrooms. Other studies bore the same results. On July 15, the CDC stated that people are more likely to suffer from a higher infection rate of COVID in their homes than from outside the home. Should we now have to wear masks at home? Candidate for Pima County Board of Supervisors Steve Spain has cited several papers on the use of mask wearing. The ones that claimed the wearing of masks was ineffective supported the author's assertions with statistics and other qualifying data. In contrast, the articles claiming the efficacy of mask wearing were not supported by corroborating evidence. The entire body of scientific evidence for the ineffectiveness of mask wearing is overwhelming. Viral particles can go through any known face mask. In addition, mask companies have even stated that the mask will not protect from coronavirus. But Mr. Spain then asked an obvious question that is being ignored in this discussion. Quote, who is going to enforce the mask-wearing edict? Are we going to make our local police the mask police? Another obvious question being ignored is one of the constitutionality of the edict, stating that all must wear masks in certain places and circumstances in Sierra Vista. Such an edict is clearly unconstitutional. Our police have taken an oath to support and defend the U.S. Constitution. Requiring them to enforce an unconstitutional edict clearly violates this oath. It puts them in an untenable position. By the same token, our mayor and city councilors have all taken that same oath to support and defend the U.S. Constitution. Our mayor and city councilors, by declaring and approving an unconstitutional edict, have violated their solemn oaths to support and defend the U.S. Constitution. But you are not alone in doing so. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey has done the same with his regressive lockdown of Arizona, in spite of the fact that the Wuhan mortality rates have plummeted. He is basing his authority for his actions on Arizona Revised Statute Title 36, Section 787, which allows the governor and his agencies to limit and even remove our constitutional rights under the guise of a, quote, state of emergency, close quote. This should scare every Arizona citizen. Examples include Section B, ration, medicine, and vaccines. Section C, mandate treatment or vaccination of persons who are diagnosed with illness resulting from exposure or who are reasonably believed to have been exposed or who may reasonably be expected to be exposed. Kind of covers everyone, doesn't it? Also, quote, isolate and quarantine persons. Section D, quote, law enforcement officials of this state and the National Guard shall enforce orders issued by the governor under this section. So despite what your doctor says, in an emergency, the governor can ration your medicine, mandate that you receive vaccinations, and order that you be isolated and quarantined. And if you don't agree, the police and National Guard can enforce these unconstitutional edicts upon you against your will. And all of this is just on the first page of the statute. Now, does this sound like the American Republic or Communist Russia? Clearly, this unconstitutional Arizona statute should have been nullified or removed long ago by our state representatives and senators. We, the citizens of Arizona, will see that this is done come January 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Daniel. Daniel, excuse me.
It's all right.
Next, we have Dr. Jaffrey.
Mr. Mayor, member of the council, thank you for allowing me the time to speak with you. I am Ira Jaffrey. I have retired from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine as an associate professor of clinical medicine, board-certified medicine, medical oncology, and I've lectured on epidemiology internationally in London. First of all, let me clarify a few things. This virus is not man-made. This virus developed in what we call the wet markets of China. The second and third problems with this virus are very unique. Most of you are familiar with another coronavirus called the common cold. You get a cold, you get a sick, you're running nose, everybody wants to stay away from you. A week or 10 days go by, it's over, and that's the end of it. It does not work this way with COVID-19. This virus disturbs your pulmonary system, your cardiac system, your hematological system, your brain, your ability to sleep, and your skin. And many of these things do not go away when the virus is over. This is the most significant problem we're having with our young people today, because they are under the illusion that although they are not going to die or get very sick from the virus, that when it's over, it's over. I recently reviewed a case of a 27-year-old young woman who was an active mountain climber and rock climber, mountain biker. She had the virus. She was never required hospitalization. She was cared for at home. She's recovered from the virus. She can only walk about 2 miles now. She cannot climb. She cannot do rock climbing. Her entire outdoor life is essentially over. And what is worse, at the age of 27, she has these shortcomings. By the time she's 35, she'll be on oxygen. By the time she's 45, she's going to be looking for a lung transplant. The biggest problem with this virus is that unlike most viruses, it can be transmitted while you're asymptomatic. While I was sitting here, I was counting. There's about 31 people who are present in this room tonight. Some of them wearing masks appropriately, others wearing the mask inappropriately with their nose uncovered, many people touching surfaces and then touching their face, all of which are contraindicated if you want to stay free of this. The probability is very high that there is at least one person in this room tonight who is presently incubating this virus. And they don't know it, so you can't hold them accountable. But you're going to be exposed if you hear within 10 or 14 days that either one of the participants of the council or one of the people coming to attend have been determined to be positive. Secondly, children over the age of 10 have been demonstrated by careful study to not only carry the virus, but be highly infective to their teachers and their homes. Now, the lady who spoke before me asked the question about whether or not we would be wearing masks in homes. That has been recommended by the CDC because many homes have older people. You may have your parents or grandparents there. There is a breadwinner who's going out to Lowe's or Fry's or City Market where he's exposed to hundreds of people. Then he's bringing that back into the home situation. The probability of this pandemic being shut down without significant control measures is 0. Now, right now, the numbers in Arizona seem to have stabilized. We are 2 weeks from July 4th. I would like this meeting to have been held a week later because I suspect strongly that 3 weeks from July 4th, we're going to see a significant spike because of the number of gatherings that took place on that day, where young people were gathering in pools and bars and outdoor barbecues, totally violating all the rules and regulations that were suggested. The gal who spoke before said something about the constitutionality of this. The Supreme Court has ruled that the role of public health supersedes individual rights, and you can be required to isolate, quarantine, and even be vaccinated. Many of the states have now pulled the religious exemptions for vaccination, and either you want to get your kids vaccinated or they don't go to school, period, end of discussion. I'm of the Jewish faith, and one of the biggest problems I had before I came out here was that multiple Orthodox communities were being recommended by rabbinical sources not to immunize against measles, mumps, chickenpox, whooping cough. And as a result, we were seeing epidemics. One of the problems that we have today about the anti-vaxxers and the failure to rely on scientific evidence is that the young women in this audience have never seen paralytic polio, measles encephalitis, chickenpox pneumonia, whooping cough, tetanus. Therefore, it's very hard for a mother to look at her small children and say, why should I subject them to these vaccinations when I don't know what I'm protecting them from?
Dr. Jaffer, your 5 minutes are up. I'd ask you to make your concluding remarks, please.
My concluding remarks are that unless you want to be here 2 months from now looking at a spike of viruses in Sierra Vista, you need a mandatory mask requirement. No municipality is going to find 100% adherence, but it will certainly cut down the transmission of the virus. And I thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Doctor. That concludes the call to the public. So we'll move on to comments and requests of council. Tonight we start with Mrs. Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make, unless the doctor is aware and that we already have a mask requirement in the city, and you're just saying that so that we keep it.
Well, no, he is. He
Okay.
calls me on a regular basis
Does
and,
he?
and advises me, and I appreciate that. So
Thank you. Thank you for coming to speak to us, that everyone who did. That's all. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Ms. Humphrey. Mr. Benning.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Sabre for giving our invocation today, and then everyone that came and talked to us. And I want to thank Matt for the briefing we had this week on a issue with homelessness, mental health, etc. Mainly to bring out the internship. We had an intern that got to brief us. She spent her time gathering information, and it's nice seeing the city able to host people from college students learning and getting their feet wet. So I just want to say kudos to the city. And that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benning. Mrs. Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank Ms. Albritton. I heard that is an invocation before. It's very smart and covers a lot of territory, and I appreciate that you read it for us, and I'd like a copy of it, please. Thank you. Also,
There's a small charge, right? No. Okay.
That's it for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Calhoun. Ms. Wolf.
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf.
You're most welcome.
Mrs. Pacheco.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I did get to go meet with the new superintendent of schools for Sierra Vista. Very impressed, very excited to have him here in our town. The schools are facing some tough choices and trying to adapt to ever-changing situations. And as a mom of 4 kids who are in school, who are facing going back to school this year, we are looking at those choices too. So I know that all the parents out there, there's a lot of discussion on Facebook, but at the end of the day, this is what's best for my family, and we're going to make that choice for our family, and be kind to each other and let, the school's doing the best they can to adapt to changing circumstances and everything. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes, would not want to be in his shoes. But I appreciate the work that they're doing to be adaptable and to offer families options to choose what's right for their family this coming school year. So get those responses back in to the school district by like next week, right? They're trying to hear from every parent in the district by next week on what choice they have chosen for their kids. So it'll be an interesting, and we're like this city is venturing on a whole new world in education this school year. So it's going to be very interesting what happens.
And I just want to add on that subject, based on the governor's talk today, he had the state superintendent with him, and they're continuing to, this is continuing to evolve and change and take into consideration concerns of parents and other things that come up. So I'm sure they'll be talking about this next week and the week after that as well. So this is a very important, very hot topic. If nobody has any objections, Mrs. Calhoun has asked for an alibi.
Objections.
Can we object?
There's two things I forgot to mention. One, I want to also thank Matthew for his comments, especially your praise to the police chief. I appreciate that, and your suggestions. And also, I just want to remind everybody there is a drop-off box in the atrium, which means you don't have to come all the way into the lobby. You can bring your mail-in ballots and walk them in and put them in a secure box in the atrium of City Hall. And I hope there are others out there listening to this so that we get lots of people voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Calhoun. Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I'm actually going to talk tonight. I want to say thank you to Sabra for coming. When I spoke at the Women's Club for the very first time that I'd been there and heard that collect, I was just so impressed and thought it was so fitting for all time, but especially for the times that we're in now. So thank you for coming and sharing that. And I also wanted to mention the briefing that we got from Matthew and Alicia, the intern yesterday. I believe she's in the 20-ish year range, and as far as age, she looked 12, but we'll go with 20 since she was in college. But she was exceptional. Her poise and her knowledge and her dedication to the subject was over the top impressive. So we did great hiring her, and we were very fortunate to have her. On a more serious note, while I was very pleased to see the numbers trending downward, and proud to see Sierra Vista's numbers headed in the right way, I just want to give a little of a cautionary tale. My father, as everyone knows, is a pastor, and he today had to preach a funeral for his closest friend who died from this. We'll be preaching another one next week for a mother who is a childhood friend of theirs with 2 sons not expected to live, that are my age. So this is not the time to let up our diligence. This is not the time to get careless. We need to continue doing what we're doing. It's working. So let's just please continue that. And that's all, Mayor.
And I want to take this opportunity to thank you for filling in for me with the Women's Club that day. I think I was taking a treatment or something, because I always enjoy talking to the Sierra Vista Women's Club. It's a great group. I do want to mention that we do have a primary on the 4th of August coming up here, and we don't have another meeting before that. So I just want to mention for August, the polls will be open from 6 to 7 p.m. So get out and vote. Normally I say if we were from Chicago, vote early and often, but since we're in Sierra Vista, vote early. Everybody should have received one of these messages in the mail for the primary, or if you didn't get it today, you'll probably get it tomorrow. But one of the issues we had with the last election cycle is there were a lot of folks going to vote. And if you don't have your absentee vote in, which you should have already applied for the primary, I'll just mention that the voting stations are at the St. Andrew's Church as right here in Sierra Vista. The Shiloh Christian Ministries, which is on the east side of town, the United Methodist Church on the south side of town. Those are the ones in town. But additionally, there's one in Huachuca City near the City Hall. There's also one at the Mountain Vista Baptist Church out on Mosen Road. And there's one at the Palominas Fire District, which is on the South Kings Ranch Road. So if the three in town are busy or you're closer to one of those outliers, it may be worth your time and effort to go to one of those to vote. And I hope to see you at the polls. And while we're talking about that kind of thing, the census has kind of been extended beyond what it was because of the COVID situation. Our numbers are actually pretty good in Sierra Vista. I think we're ahead of percentage-wise where we were last time, but we still have the opportunity to get counted. I was talking with a young lady that was training the canvas people that are going to go out and start knocking on doors. So if you get a knock on the door and somebody says, "I'm with the census," please open the door, take the time to fill out the information. It all has to do with not just the count, but the federal tax dollars that we can qualify for, so it gets your tax dollars back from the federal government and into our community so that we can use them the way we feel it's important for us. So the census is very important. Again, I'd like everybody to stay healthy, stay at home when you can, wash your hands, social distance, and wear a mask. With that, meeting's adjourned.